Hey guys, it's Amanda, and today we're going to dive back into the world of PCOS. I've been wanting to do this update for a long time, considering that it has actually been 2 years since my PCOS story, and I really can't believe that because it feels like yesterday. Just as a quick recap, PCOS is polycystic ovarian syndrome, and it's usually identified by 5 different symptoms: missed or irregular periods, acne, weight gain or trouble losing weight, hair growth, and cysts on the ovaries. You don't need to have all of those symptoms to be diagnosed with PCOS. I think it's usually 4 out of the 5 helps them to diagnose it. I'm not going to say too much more about it. If you want to know more about my story, you can check it out up here. Without further ado, let's get right into the video. So I'd say for about a little over a year after my PCOS story video, I had most of my symptoms under control. I was having success losing weight. My periods were a little more regular. I wouldn't say that they were perfect, but they were definitely more regular. I didn't have a whole lot of issues with acne besides the occasional flare-up, and things were going pretty well, I would say. It wasn't until July of last year that I noticed that I wasn't getting my periods anymore, so obviously something was off again. And there were a few changes that I made that may have contributed. I am not sure, but I figured they're worth mentioning just for the sake of it. So one thing was, when I had started on my journey after PCOS, I had first started low carb, then went to keto, and then went back to just low carb. I noticed that sort of like low carb, one thing was super restricted for me, and second of all was giving me a lot of digestive issues. I wasn't really working well with low carb, and I found it pretty stressful and more like it was not sustainable for me. And I've talked about that, I think, with keto, and low carb is more sustainable, but it just still wasn't necessarily something that I really enjoyed. So I decided that I was going to make the switch to just more whole foods and see how that affected me. My digestion got a lot better. My sugar wasn't affected. It stayed within a good range. And for a while I was still pretty regular with my periods. The second change I made was with my medications. So I was finally in a place where I wanted to slowly wean myself off of all of the medications I didn't need. The one that I was keeping was obviously my thyroid medication because I can't live without that. But I was on a few other things, and one of those was metformin. Now, the thing that really kind of solidified my decision was I was on Facebook and I saw an article about how there was a certain metformin that was linked to cancer. I did talk to my doctor, and she said it was just this certain one, and I wasn't necessarily so worried about that, but I kind of viewed it as a confirmation from the universe, hey, yes, this is your push to slowly wean yourself off. So I'm not saying that you need to do that or to be worried if you're on metformin. It was only a certain one. Do your research, talk to your doctor. But for me, it was just kind of the sign from the universe, hey, you're on the right path. You should start weaning yourself off. So I did not do that until after, actually, that I had noticed my first missed period. So I don't necessarily think that's related. Maybe it had something to do with it staying away. I have no idea. But my blood sugar stayed fine, which is why I was taking that medication in the first place. So it didn't affect that or anything else, really. Just the fact that I obviously still did not get my period. The third change actually was with my thyroid medication. Now, I did not stop taking it, but my doctor has been trying to get it exactly right. So although my thyroid numbers were pretty good, she said that I was still on a little bit too high of a dose. So she had slowly been trying to change it. So she lowered the dose. And the problem was I was not able to get my blood work in a timely fashion because of everything going on in 2020. I kept making the appointment, and then the place kept being closed and rescheduling. And by the time I got my blood work, the results came back that I was actually now on too low of a dose. Was not really surprised because I noticed that I had been starting having a hard time losing weight again, and I was actually gaining, and it didn't make sense from how I was eating. Like, there was no way that I would be gaining weight that fast, especially when I was pretty conscious about what I was eating. I mean, we all have those days, but I was not eating nearly enough to be gaining the kind of weight that I was gaining. So I was not really surprised about that, and I wouldn't be surprised if that has something to do with everything going on as well. Regardless, my endocrinologist had said if it had been more than a few months without my period, I think she said like 4 months or whatever, that I would need to reach out to my primary care physician, who was the one who was taking care of my exams and stuff like that. I reached out to her, and she put me in touch with a specialist, a gynecologist, which I just had the appointment on Thursday. And she, after going through my medical records, talking to me about what was going on, and just comparing everything, decided that she agreed with my endocrinologist. It did sound like PCOS. She looked at the blood work and decided that she wanted to redo that blood work and see where I was at now. The other thing she wanted to do was, and this is something my endocrinologist talked to me about, so when you don't have your period, it's not releasing all of that, and the uterine wall can build up and become thicker, and that can be problematic and cause different health problems. So another thing that I need to get done is I need to have a ultrasound to make sure everything's okay down there, and that is where I'm at with her. And we kind of laid out a more comprehensive plan, which I'll explain later after I explain a few other things and then talk about where we're going with this whole video. So before I get into that, I wanted to talk about where I am at in this journey. And for me right now, I am at the beginning of trying to heal my PCOS symptoms naturally. So it's my understanding that there's not actually a cure for PCOS, and even my doctor the other day said that once you have PCOS, you kind of just have PCOS. So my goal really is healing my PCOS in the way that I'm nourishing my body and healing my body in the way that it needs natural. One of the greatest resources I have found right now is actually the Happy Mama here on YouTube, and I think she has changed her focus of her channel a little bit these days, but she has a ton of content about healing PCOS and foods to have and foods to avoid, and she also has a lot about trying to conceive, which I'll talk about in a little bit as well. So I'll link her down below, but she has really inspired me just to be more positive about PCOS and feeling like I am stronger than everything going on with my body, and rather than focusing on what's going wrong, focus on what I can do right for my body. So one of the things that I've been trying to do is be more plant-based. I wouldn't classify myself as a vegan per se, but I have been trying to cut out meat and dairy as much as possible in order to reduce the amount of foods that I'm intaking that are causing inflammation. But I'm trying also not to focus so much about what foods I can't have, and instead focusing on the foods that are healing and helpful and nourishing and giving me nutrients, rather than saying I need to get rid of this, but focusing more on adding in more foods that I need and letting the other ones naturally fall away. I've seen it time and time again with myself. Trying to exclude whole food groups and stuff like that really just makes me feel restricted. And while keto and low carb worked for me, I feel like as soon as I changed that, obviously the results weren't lasting. Thankfully for my blood sugar, it was lasting, and I hope that that continues. But as far as the PCOS symptoms, it was not a long-term solution. And I would rather focus on something that makes me feel good, which I feel like making sure I have nutrient-dense foods and stuff like that is much more rewarding to me than making sure that I'm only eating things that are low carb. I don't know if that makes sense. And I really do believe that everybody's body is different, and what each person needs, they need to figure out for themselves. So this is really just what I'm finding is making me feel good, and I encourage you to be on your own journey and not focus on necessarily what I'm saying, but find what resonates with you and what works for you and what makes your body feel best and what you notice helps you. So for me right now, I'm taking guidance from those who have seen plant-based diets work for them, and I'm incorporating that. I'm trying to slowly incorporate more movement and stuff into my life that works for me. And that's kind of my plan right now. And now I will get into part 2 of this video. So part 2 is kind of an announcement in a way. And it seems crazy for me to be talking about, but I am going to be talking about my new journey about Jacob and I trying to conceive. The reason this feels so weird for me to be talking about is because it was such a big topic of debate for Jacob and I for such a long time because of the car accident and thyroid cancer and PCOS and literally just all of the amazing complications that come along with being married to me. We just weren't sure if it was in the cards for us, and you know, we were kind of at peace with that for a while. But then once things started to straighten out a little bit, we kind of changed our minds. We talked about it and we're like, you know, we kind of actually want to try to have kids. It's been a little bit of an emotional journey because we had decided that not too long before actually I missed that period. So at first we were wondering, like, am I pregnant already? And unfortunately, no, that was not the case. I've taken pregnancy tests. My endocrinologist did a formal test because, she wanted to rule that out. I have another one coming up with my blood work with my gynecologist, but I'm not feeling like that's really the reason I'm not having my periods. So it's been a little emotional because although it's kind of more of a if it happens for us at this point, it's still kind of a little heartbreaking because you have that little bit of expectation when you take the test and getting the negative is not a good feeling. So with that being said, I am on this PCOS healing journey as well as this trying to conceive with PCOS journey, and I decided that I wanted to document it, and I am going to be making it a series. I'm going to kind of give updates about my PCOS / trying to conceive journey, and there's a lot out there, I feel, from people that are giving tips on how they did conceive, or, I'm at the tail end of some people's journeys. They might have been sharing it the whole time. And I also noticed that there's a lot of people out there that they're on their journey and they're using IVF and different fertility treatments. That's not what our journey is going to be. Like I said, we would like to do it naturally. If we can't do it naturally, I'm not sure that we really want to go into those different measures. So I wanted to share my journey of solely doing things naturally and just seeing where that comes, whether it's just healing my PCOS or whether we eventually have a baby. I just figured that could be the next thing in my life that I share with the YouTube universe. Okay, so backtracking a bit and going back to what I was saying about my doctor. So one of the options for helping the symptoms is birth control. Now that isn't necessarily an option for me because of, like I explained in my PCOS journey video, the blood clotting and the strokes and all of that. You're really not supposed to take birth control, and I'm not sure that going back on birth control is something I want to do anyway. Like I said, I'm trying to do things a little bit more naturally, so even without trying to conceive, I'm not sure that that's a route that I want to go. but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Obviously that's not an option right now, period, because my doctor knows that I do want to have children. So her first concern, as was with Jacob and I, is making sure that it is safe for me to have children based off of my history. So having had blood clots and strokes and, you know, PCOS where my blood sugar was elevated, it does make, if I have children, a more high risk pregnancy. So the next step for me is to meet with a specialist that will go over whether or not this is even a good idea for me to get pregnant based off of my history. So that is what her plan is for me, and then we were gonna deal with everything as we go along. And like I said, I'm not necessarily wanting to go a birth control type route, so we'll see what happens with that. So as of right now, I'm just waiting to get my results back from my blood work to see where I'm at as far as PCOS, to see if for some reason I'm pregnant and every test that I've taken has been incorrect, or maybe outdated by now, who knows. And, you know, I'm just going to continue doing my plant-based diet, trying to get more movement, trying to get my weight down, working with my endocrinologist to get my thyroid numbers back to where they need to be, and just really focusing on my health. I'm at a point where I'm not focusing so much on, like, necessarily getting to a certain weight or doing a certain thing. I'm just focusing on the health of my body here and making sure that everything is in balance and where it needs to be. So I'm just gonna take everything one step at a time. The next step is meeting with that doctor after I get my results back, and until then I'm just gonna do the best I can to take care of this body. So I will be updating you guys. Like I said, this is going to be a new series on my channel, based on PCOS and trying to conceive. I will try to do some research and share some more informational videos. This was kind of just my little vlog about what's been going on with me since my last PCOS video, and now I'll try to really pinpoint things. I'll have vlogs, I'll have informational videos, and hopefully that helps somebody. And even if it's just like being able to relate to each other. So yeah, that's where I'm at now, and I look forward to sharing this journey with you guys. Until next time, bye.